Discover the touching diary of a struggling girl. CEO's incredible reaction to a hidden truth. Amid the clattering dishes and the commanding presence of a hectic lunch shift, Emily's heart sank under a familiar weight. At just 17, she balanced responsibilities that far exceeded her age, 2 jobs to support her single mother and younger siblings, all while harboring dreams that often felt out of reach. Her peers, effortlessly gliding through life on the wings of privilege, often left her feeling invisible and undermined. She longed to escape their shadow, but as she burned the midnight oil over homework, the pressures of expectation tightened their grip around her. Her diary served as a sanctuary, a place where she bared her soul. Here, she penned dreams of academic accolades and her anxieties about the future, scribbling confessions about feeling like a burden rather than a beacon. Yet one fateful afternoon, as she dashed to deliver lunches for her part-time job, the worst happened. She left her diary behind. The thought of it sitting in the corporate office, vulnerable and exposed, sent a wave of panic crashing over her. "Can you believe it?" echoed in her mind as she replayed the potential fallout in stark detail. If anyone read her innermost thoughts, they could tear apart the fragile identity she had clung to for so long. The glitzy lives of her classmates loomed large, and as she navigated their judgments, the spiraling suffocation squeezed tighter. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days bled together, pressure mounting as she dared to hope that someone would return the diary without peeking. But the unfathomable occurred instead. Mark, a CEO known for his rags-to-riches journey, discovered her diary. He wasn't dismissive. He was captivated, each line gripping his heart as he recognized his past struggles mirrored in her words. Instead of hiding, he felt compelled to reach out, igniting a flicker of unexpected mentorship that painted a glimmer of hope in her otherwise gray existence. Yet, as news of her diary's contents leaked through the high school grapevine, the glimmer dimmed. Overnight, her most vulnerable moments became fodder for scorn, classmates rallying to brand her as seeking pity. Emily felt the world shift beneath her, the very ground she stood on quaking with the tremors of judgment. She questioned her worth as laughter echoed in her ears from those who didn't know her struggle. That moment, the sting of betrayal, was a visceral reminder of what it meant to expose herself. As her self-esteem crumbled beneath the weight of ridicule, a suffocating dread took up residence in her chest. "You're just a girl from a small town," whispered insecurities as they wove a tighter web around her heart. Would she dare to step onto that stage Mark planned to set, rekindling her dreams amidst the storm of cynicism? The thought churned in her stomach. She felt a sharp pang of desperation. How could she stand before those who mocked her, openly sharing her story once more? As she faced her reflection in the mirror, the question echoed in the silence. Could she rise against the tide of judgment that threatened to pull her under? Doubts swirled like a tempest. The weight of defeat pressed heavily on her shoulders. Emily clenched her fists, bracing for an impending battle that teetered between reclaiming her narrative and capitulating to fear. Uncertainty tangled with determination, leaving the air thick with unresolved tension. As the world outside buzzed on, within her heart, a quiet question lingered. Would she take that leap, or allow her fears to cloud the future she so desperately desired? Emily's thoughts raced like wildfire as she navigated the familiar streets on her way home. Each step felt heavier, her heart a battlefield of self-reflection and uncertainty. She replayed the laughter of her classmates in her mind, the pointed whispers and snickers exposing her vulnerabilities. No longer just a girl from a small town, she felt like a symbol of ridicule now, the weight of judgment an anchor pulling her deeper into despair. A chill of dismay crept into her bones as she envisioned the upcoming lunch shift at the cafe. Her hands trembled slightly, imagining the scrutinizing gazes fixed upon her as she served tables. Would they hurl more cruel words at her? Or would they simply pretend she didn't exist? The thought made her stomach churn. Yet beneath this chaos, a flicker of defiance sparked within her. Despite the torment she faced, a small voice urged her to reclaim the narrative. After all, it was her story. As the cafe door swung open, the familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans welcomed her. The buzz of conversation and the sound of clattering dishes felt oddly comforting, yet alien. She took a deep breath, greeting her coworkers with a half-hearted smile. Perhaps the distraction of serving customers would provide the solace she desperately sought. As she moved from table to table, each interaction was like a patch on the torn fabric of her confidence. Then, as she cleared a table, she noticed one of the regulars, a kind older woman named Mrs. Hargrove, watching her intently. Instead of avoiding eye contact, Emily held her gaze. The warmth in the woman's eyes sent a ripple of reassurance through her, and in that moment, she recognized an opportunity to connect beyond the surface. "Emily, dear, I couldn't help but notice you seem a bit overwhelmed today," Mrs. Hargrove said gently, her voice laced with concern. Emily hesitated, longing to share the turmoil swirling in her mind, but fear gripped her tongue. What would an old woman with no stakes in her life understand? But something in Mrs. Hargrove's sight, grounded and sincere, chipped away a layer of hesitation. "It's just things have been difficult lately," Emily managed, her vulnerability exposed. "Difficulties often become the stepping stones for greatness, Emily. Sometimes, it's in our struggles that we find our wings," Mrs. Hargrove replied, her words laced with wisdom earned through a lifetime of experiences. Those words hung in the air, and Emily found herself reflecting. Perhaps her current struggles were not the end of her story, but rather a pause, a chance to find strength within. She felt a swell of determination rise within her chest, invigorating her spirit. In the quiet moments following the shift, Emily sat at a table alone, heart racing with newfound inspiration. Mrs. Hargrove's words echoed in her mind, stepping stones for greatness. She envisioned herself standing before her classmates and sharing her narrative, not as a plea for sympathy but as a testament to resilience. That night, as she picked up her diary once more, she resolved to pen a letter not just to chronicle her thoughts, but as a manifesto of her defiance against fear. This time, she would write not for the approval of others, but for her own empowerment. Yet, as she flipped the pages, a dampened pang of doubt revived itself. What if I fail? The question loomed, unyielding. The remnants of her turmoil threatened to slice through her resolve. As she paused, the flicker of determination cracked through the fog of hesitation. What if she took that leap? What if this could be her moment? With ink poised over paper, the quiet question arose yet again. Could she reclaim her story, launch into the unknown, and embrace the possibility of transformation? The stage loomed before her, tensions coiling tightly as the weight of the decision intensified. Could she find courage amidst fear? Time slowed as Emily closed her eyes, envisioning the moment before her classmates, feeling the adrenaline surge. Would she rise? Or would fear hold her captive and extinguish her burgeoning flame? Emily awoke the next morning with her heart still tangled in a web of apprehension and resolve. Those words from Mrs. Hargrove rattled in her head, serving as both a bomb and a trigger. She had committed to capturing her feelings in her diary, but the prospect of facing her peers loomed like a storm cloud overhead. As she prepared for another shift at the cafe, she forced herself to breathe deeply, recalling the warm encouragement of the older woman. With each task, brewing coffee, arranging pastries, wiping down tables, she sought to bolster her confidence. Rather than merely serving drinks, she began approaching each customer as a potential conversation, an opportunity to connect. But as the hours passed, anxiety still gnawed at her. What was she so afraid of? Criticism, laughter, or the stark silence of indifference? Each imagined scenario replayed in her mind, tightening the knots within her chest. Would they see her as the person she hoped to be or remain fixated on the timid girl from before? Midway through her shift, she stumbled upon an answer unfolding in an unlikely moment. A small group of teenagers came in, their chatter loud and boisterous. As she served them, one of them, a girl with bright eyes and an infectious laugh, began to share a story about her own struggles with self-doubt. Emily's ears perked up, and she felt an unexpected kinship forming, one built from shared vulnerability. This girl, who seemed so effortlessly confident, admitted that her laughter often masked her worries. "You know," the girl said, narrowing her gaze on Emily, "sometimes the hardest battles are fought in silence, but it doesn't have to stay that way." Friendship bloomed in the most unexpected of places. Emily found herself sharing snippets of her own experiences, words spilling out much more freely than they had in ages. Each revelation seemed to peel back layers of isolation, letting a newfound sense of belonging wash over her. With every shared moment, the cafe transformed from a backdrop of judgment into a sanctuary of support. As her shift ended, Emily's head swirled with the warmth of connection. Each customer's smile, every slice of laughter, felt like tentative steps toward her own reclaiming process. For once, she didn't feel the same weight of insecurity drag her down. Instead, she felt lighter, as if she were shedding the chains of others' opinions. Sitting down at the close of her shift, Emily picked up her diary once more. She paused, reflecting on the evening, the young girl's story, the camaraderie that developed from a shared openness. In this moment, she realized her words had power. They could build bridges or expose wounds, but ultimately, they belonged to her. With determination infused into her writing, she poured out the lessons of the day. Risks could lead to transformation, and vulnerability could serve as a path to strength rather than weakness. However, the burgeoning excitement of growth was accompanied by an unmistakable undercurrent of apprehension. She was on the brink of attempting something frighteningly new, a chance to present her truth to her classmates. Each stroke of her pen stoked the embers of her courage, but still, the nagging question remained. Was she truly ready to unveil herself? The echo of Mrs. Hargrove's wisdom rang in her ears, and with each word, a new resolve surfaced. She could do this. She had to. Emily closed her diary, knowing that the time had come to decide. Would she stand beneath the spotlight in front of her classmates and share her hidden truths, risking judgment in the pursuit of authenticity? The decision teetered on the edge, and a thrilling shudder ran through her. It was time to find out if she possessed the courage to face her fears head-on, or if she would falter when her resolve was tested. A new challenge lay in wait, and uncertainty still clung to her heart like shadows. But then again, perhaps the best stories are the ones born from overcoming those very shadows. The next morning, Emily stood before the mirror, fixing her hair with shaky hands. She caught her reflection, an image layered with uncertainty and a flicker of determination. The memory of the cafe lingered, the camaraderie igniting within her an unfamiliar spark. She had glimpsed her potential, yet standing before her classmates felt akin to a tightrope walk above an abyss. School felt like a different universe altogether. Students milled around, laughter ringing in the air, but Emily felt a barrier separating her from their joy. She could feel the weight of eyes on her, though none of them bore the same scrutiny she directed inward. Each step toward her locker was imbued with questioning thoughts. Was she truly prepared? What if sharing her truth only invited mockery? As she opened her locker, a slip of paper slipped out, fluttering to the floor. Emily picked it up, recognizing it instantly, the note she had written days earlier about her thoughts on vulnerability. The words felt fragile in her hands but brimming with the potential for growth. "Hey, EMS!" A voice interrupted her reverie, pulling her attention to Olivia standing nearby. A friendly smile painted across her face. Olivia's confidence radiated, drawing Emily closer like a moth to a flame. The fear that sparked within her was quickly doused by Olivia's warmth. "Want to grab lunch together?" Olivia asked, tilting her head. The invitation felt genuine, a lifeline amidst the storm of uncertainty. As they sat on the sun-drenched cafeteria steps, Emily felt the knots in her stomach ease slightly as Olivia shared stories from her recent adventures. The sheer normalcy of their conversation, detail about classes, friends, and the impending math test provided a sense of comfort that dulled her anxiety. "You seem different today," Olivia observed after a moment of silence, her voice directed at Emily with an understanding that felt rare. Emily hesitated, her heart racing. The urge to be honest churned inside her, a push against the pull of fear. "I've been thinking a lot about being open and sharing my feelings. It's scary, but I think it might be worth it." "Honestly?" Olivia leaned closer, her gaze intent. "I admire that. Talking about struggles isn't easy." The sincerity in Olivia's voice ignited a flicker of courage within Emily. For the first time, she saw herself reflected in someone else's empathy. Perhaps this wasn't about seeking validation but about fostering connections through shared experiences. "Maybe it's time I stop hiding," Emily ventured slowly, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "I've always felt like I had to keep things inside. But now, thinking about it, I want to reveal more about who I am." Throughout the lunch, Emily outlined her vision conversations, stories, the desire to create an open space. Olivia listened intently, her enthusiasm palpable. "You could start by just talking. I'm sure others will connect with your truth," she encouraged. Later, as Emily sat in the library, surrounded by countless books yet starkly aware of her own inhibitions, she felt a new wave of determination wash over her. She held her diary tightly, flipping through her words, each one breathing life into her resolve. It was then she decided, sharing her story wouldn't just be an act of courage. It would serve as a testament to her growth. The real test loomed before her, but the thought of inspiring others made the idea more exhilarating than intimidating. As the clock ticked closer to her class presentation, Emily's heart raced with a blend of anticipation and dread. She had faced this moment of truth, only to discover it was more than just about her fears. It was about claiming her voice. In an echo of Olivia's encouragement, she felt a surge of determination bubbling within her. But as she stepped into the classroom, surrounded by the watchful eyes of her classmates, the stakes raised anew. Would her voice carry the weight she hoped it would, or would it falter under pressure? Before she could answer, the teacher called her name, and the class shifted their focus. The moment had arrived, the moment she had both craved and feared. Emily squared her shoulders, ready to confront the unknown. Would she emerge transformed, or would the shadows of doubt swallow her whole? Emily's grip tightened on her notes as she approached the front of the classroom, the eyes of her classmates piercing through the veil of her resolve. The chatter faded, replaced by the pulsing beat of her heart. She had envisioned this moment countless times, standing there, raw and exposed, ready to share the depths of her vulnerability. Yet, as she looked out at the sea of faces, uncertainty threatened to shatter her newfound courage. The teacher's encouraging nod felt like a flicker of hope, anchoring Emily in that moment. "You can do this," she reminded herself silently, unfolding her notes with trembling fingers. She recalled Olivia's words, "just talking," and she drew a breath that tasted faintly of freedom. Hey everyone," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "Today I want to talk about being vulnerable." The pause that followed felt endless, a hollow echo of doubt, yet she pressed on. "I've always been the quiet one, keeping my thoughts bottled up. But the truth is, I struggle too. I mean, we all do, right?" The slight rustle of shifting chairs signified attention. Emily let the silence settle, grounding herself in the shared reality of her classmates. Media often painted high school as a battlefield of social drama. But here, Emily realized, lay a field ripe for sowing understanding. As she spoke, she shared moments of anxiety, the times when insecurities wrapped around her like chains, and the way she had felt isolated even in crowded rooms. Each word felt as heavy as a stone but as essential as air. With every glance from her peers, a connection seemed to fire between them, illuminating the shared struggles lying beneath the surface. "I'm scared of being judged for my thoughts, for not fitting in," she admitted, her voice rising with fervor. "But when I think about it, I'd rather be authentic than pretend everything is perfect. We all have our battles." To her surprise, a few classmates nodded in agreement, their expressions shifting from indifference to recognition. The weight of isolation that had engulfed her began to lift, revealing the potential for genuine connection. Emily continued, emboldened by this subtle affirmation, weaving stories of resilience and hope, of finding strength in vulnerability. When she concluded, a ripple of applause broke out. Emily's heart soared. In that moment, she transcended the self-imposed limitations that had clung to her for years. A tear of relief slipped down her cheek, unnoticed amidst the applause. A voice broke through the noise. "Wow, Emily!" It was Jason, a classmate she knew from math class. "I had no idea you felt that way. I guess we all do sometimes." His words struck a chord, stirring not just gratitude, but a deeper sense of purpose within her. "Thanks, Jason," she replied, her earlier nerves now replaced with a sense of belonging. "We should be able to talk about this stuff. It helps." Encouraged, others began to share their own experiences. Stories emerged, each one a testament to the silent battles fought daily. These conversations swelled into a collective expression of vulnerability that remained unspoken before this moment. Emily felt transformed, suddenly part of a tapestry woven from threads of shared humanity. As they wrapped up, her teacher approached, his expression a mixture of pride and admiration. "What you did today took real courage, Emily. Your voice is powerful, and I think it sparked something important in the class." Emily's heart raced not just with pride but with the realization that this was the beginning. The connection she had fostered stirred a fierce desire for more dialogues, more honesty, more growth. This experience unveiled another layer of her identity, someone who could not only inspire but also lead. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Emily turned to share a jubilant smile with Olivia, who had been watching with unmasked joy. They embraced, and in that instant, Emily understood that she wasn't alone. She had allies now in a world that often felt unwelcoming. But with newfound strength came uncertainty about what she would do next. There was a lingering question in her mind: how far could she push this new version of herself? The thought of establishing deeper connections filled her with both excitement and trepidation. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges, and as she walked out of the classroom, she couldn't shake the sensation that this was merely the preamble to a greater journey, the journey toward living her truth fully. Little did she know, the next challenge would confront her past, testing the very foundation she had just begun to build. Would she be ready to face it? Emily woke the next morning with a sense of unease churning in her stomach. The room around her felt both familiar and foreign, a paradox that made her question how much she had truly changed overnight. The confidence she had found while speaking to her class still bubbling beneath the surface, but it was entangled with the weight of uncertainty, the dread of what lay ahead. As she readied for school, the mirror reflected a version of herself she barely recognized. Her hair was slightly tousled from sleep, but her eyes held a flicker of determination. "You've got this," she whispered as she applied some lipstick, emphasizing the growing belief that she could indeed step into her power. The hallway felt electric with anxious energy. It pulsed around her like a live wire. Each face she passed reminded her of the connections she had started to forge, the shared stories, the mutual vulnerabilities. But uncertainty had a way of creeping in, and she couldn't shake the apprehension about what the day would bring. The morning classes breezed through, but her thoughts often drifted, tethered to what had broken loose within her. Was her bravery just a flash of inspiration, or was it sustainable? Now that she had broken her silence, could she continue this journey? During lunch, she sat with Olivia, who bristled with excitement. "I can't believe the impact you had yesterday. Everyone is still talking about it," she said, her voice animated. Emily smiled, her pulse quickening as she realized how much a single moment of vulnerability had altered their small world. I want to keep this going, you know? It feels like there's so much more to uncover," she replied, her brow furrowing in contemplation. The applause and camaraderie of the previous day felt like an echo, stirring dormant aspirations within her. "What if you led a discussion group?" Olivia suggested, her eyes bright with the idea. "Get people talking about what they're really feeling. You could facilitate something that fosters even more connection." The thought sent a cascade of adrenaline through Emily. Could she take on that kind of responsibility? What if it went wrong? Yet the whispers of doubt faded in the gale of possibility. Perhaps leading such a conversation was the next step she needed to take to solidify her newfound identity. Yeah, maybe, she ventured, excitement battling her anxiety. But what if they don't want to open up? Then you create a space for them to feel safe, Olivia encouraged. You've shown them that it's okay to be vulnerable, and they might need someone like you to guide them. Emily met Olivia's gaze, an ember of conviction igniting within her. If she could help others face their truths, that might be the clearest reflection of the bravery she wanted to embody. Somehow, the idea of leading their peers in candid discussion on their struggles felt not just daunting but imperative. However, uncertainty loomed. The voices of hesitation echoed louder than the thrill of leadership. She could already anticipate the doubts creeping in. What if it exposed her insecurities again? What if the very vulnerability she had championed became the source of her downfall? As the last bell rang and students shuffled out, Emily felt the weight of her decision pressing down. In halting breaths, she accepted that to lead boldly also meant risking exposure to her own fears. As she collected her belongings, a determination bloomed in her chest. It was time to confront her past, to ignite a shield of strength made from her vulnerabilities. But that night, as Emily stared at her blank journal, her pen poised over the page, a lingering tension gripped her. What would she ask of herself? What would it really mean to face the essence of who she had been and what she longed to be? She wrote the question in bold letters. What does my truth demand of me? The answer lay just ahead, waiting to be uncovered. A challenge that threatened to shake the foundation of who she believed she was and was becoming. Would she rise to meet it? Emily awoke the next day with a greater sense of resolve. The unease that had gripped her moments before now felt like a fleeting specter, replaced with a contagious energy that urged her forward. Her thoughts danced with anticipation as she mentally prepared for her classes, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that previously weighed her down. Dressed in a simple yet confident outfit, she caught herself smiling in the mirror, the vibrant hues in her wardrobe reflecting the blossoming courage within her. "Today is the day," she said softly, her voice a low hum of encouragement. As she stepped into the hallway, the electric ambience that had once intimidated her now invited her to explore the possibilities of her growth. In class, she felt different. Each lesson was not just a series of information but opportunities to connect her newfound conviction to others. When the teacher posed discussion questions, Emily found herself raising her hand more frequently, articulating her thoughts with a clarity that surprised even her. She could feel glances of acknowledgement from her peers, a palpable shift in their response to her presence. During lunch, Emily sat with Olivia, who wore a knowing smile. "I saw you in class. You were on fire," she declared. Emily's heart swelled with pride. Each compliment added fuel to the fire kindling within her. She returned the compliment, but a more profound reflection occupied her mind. "Maybe we should plan the first discussion group," Olivia suggested, her animated expression urging Emily to act. With a deep breath, Emily nodded, excitement coursing through her veins. "Okay, let us do it. We can set a date, maybe next week?" "Yes, I'll help you promote it." Olivia's enthusiasm was infectious, and together they brainstormed ideas about themes and topics, weaving in their own experiences as a source of inspiration. Emily felt empowered, but as the vision solidified in her mind, a nagging voice crept back in, echoing her insecurity. What if the group ended up being a disaster? What if nobody showed up? Pushing the doubts aside, Emily focused on something more significant, the potential for connection. She imagined the room filled with peers willing to share their stories. Wouldn't that be the real achievement? That evening, she began drafting an invitation to the discussion group, her pen scratching against the paper with an urgency. It felt like an extension of herself, a tangible manifestation of her courage. The more she wrote, the more her confidence bloomed. But there was still a shadow lurking. Her past struggles haunted her thoughts. What if those vulnerabilities became exposed again? As she penned the words explaining what the group would entail, she hesitated over how much to reveal about herself. It's okay to be vulnerable. You want them to open up, don't you? That internal struggle raged on, forcing Emily to confront what sharing her own experiences might entail. What if she uncovered the darker corners of her past in front of them? With a mix of anxiety and determination, she closed her eyes and recalled her previous speech, how it had led to transformation. Finally, she penned her truth, drawing on her struggles not to elicit pity, but warmth and solidarity. "This is about honesty and healing," she wrote, underscoring her intentions with newfound resilience. As she finished drafting the invitation, she felt lighter, as if she had uncovered a shield forged from her vulnerabilities. Still, even as excitement swelled for the group they created, Emily stared at her journal, the blank pages behind her invitation filled with unanswered questions. What challenges would arise? Who would step forward to join her? And more importantly, would anyone witness the depths she had once feared exposing? Feeling a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation, her heart raced. The moment felt pivotal, teetering on the edge of a revelation waiting to unfold. What transformation awaited her, and was she truly ready to embrace it? As the days crept towards the first meeting of her discussion group, Emily spent countless hours perfecting every detail. The slight tremor in her hands whenever she accessed her drafting notebook showcased the persistence of her anxiety. But each time she wrote, she felt that fear morph into something far more productive, a surge of determination. With each version of the invitation, she honed her message, trying to strike the right balance between vulnerability and strength. However, shadows of doubt still lurked around the edges of her excitement. The night before the scheduled gathering, her worries transformed into a persistent loop, playing like an old record in her head. What if no one showed? What if they didn't connect with her message? What if all the courage she had displayed was ultimately an illusion? Sitting in her room, Emily brought her hands to her temples and inhaled deeply, seeking calm amidst the storm of her thoughts. Images of her peers staring blankly at her, the echoes of silence that could ensue, gnawed at her sense of self. Her heart sank at the idea of failure, feeling almost paralyzing. Was she overstepping by attempting to facilitate a space meant for emotional honesty? Suddenly, Olivia's voice echoed in her memory. "This is our chance to help each other grow," she had said, her enthusiasm genuine. It made Emily consider the intention behind her efforts to create a nurturing environment that could foster real connections. What mattered most was the chance for shared understanding, not just her performance. In the early morning light, she scribbled furiously, drifting through self-reflection and illuminating her motivations. It crystallized into a resolve that overcame her doubts. If she could make one person feel seen or validated, it would be worth the risk. The meeting room buzzed with an awkward energy as students filtered in. Emily, with her heart thumping like a drum, arrived early to prepare, anxious to gather her thoughts and engage the environment. She rearranged the chairs in a circle, a gesture that symbolized openness, and placed her carefully crafted invitation in the middle as a centerpiece of connection. When the clock struck the hour, students began to trickle in, each one casting a curious glance towards her setup. Emily's breath hitched, an oscillation between excitement and dread. The spacious room, once so intimidating, began to feel like a sacred space for sharing and healing. Olivia appeared first, a beacon of comfort. "You've done great," she whispered, and Emily couldn't help but smile in relief. Soon, more familiar faces gathered, some apprehensive but willing. As the room filled, Emily felt her heart race anew, this time driven by an anticipation of connection rather than fear of rejection. She swallowed hard as she prepared to speak, feeling a rush of adrenaline course through her veins. "Thank you all for being here," Emily began, her voice wavering slightly. But as she continued, recalling her past struggles and how they had shaped her resolve to create this space, she began to find her footing. She recognized the yearning in the eyes of her peers, mirroring her own. Everyone hungered for understanding, for a safe harbor in their private storms. Suddenly, a hand shot up in the crowd. It was one of the quieter students, James. "Can we talk about real struggles?" he asked, his voice surprisingly steady amid the tension. The room pivoted around his question, an electric moment hanging in the air. Emily's heart surged. The conversation she had craved was unfolding before her. The atmosphere shifted as more participants began to join, sharing their own vulnerabilities and forming a mosaic of experiences that transcended her fears. As the discussion deepened, Emily witnessed a facet of her own character she hadn't fully recognized: the ability to lead and foster empathy, while embracing her own past. The warmth of solidarity filled the room, and she clung to it like a life raft amidst her self-imposed doubts. Yet, despite the agency she felt as the conversation progressed, nagging thoughts spiraled in the back of her mind. She knew that a single misstep could unravel the fragile tapestry they were weaving. As the stories unfolded and emotions surfaced, the weight of her own unresolved issues loomed larger. The deeper scars of her past still lingered, waiting to be addressed. As Emily glanced around the room, she locked eyes with Olivia, who offered an encouraging nod, but a different worry crept in. Would she be able to open up, meet her peers at their level of vulnerability, and be as honest as they had been? The moment felt critical, a fork in the path. Could she confront the shadows of her past, or would she shy away from the depths of her experience just as she felt confident rising? The air thickened with anticipation, and the tightening sensation in her chest warned her of the challenge ahead, a chance to unravel a deeper truth, one she had kept hidden for far too long. What awaited her on the other side of revealing her greatest fears? The atmosphere in the room crackled with energy as Emily felt the weight of her peers' expectations pressing down on her. This was no longer just a gathering. It morphed into a turning point not only for the participants but also for herself. As the stories flowed and the bonds deepened, something within her urged her to step forward, to unearth her own experiences and share the unfinished chapters of her story, the parts she had long kept hidden. Feeling the scrutiny of their eager gazes like needles on her skin, she hesitated. The urge to grip the podium and steady her shaking hands was strong, but she knew that backing down now would be a disservice to herself and to the brave souls who had just whispered their truths. They were daring to unveil their vulnerabilities, creating a tapestry woven with shared fears, and she felt an intoxicating mix of awe and a terrifying sense of obligation to reciprocate. To be honest, Emily began, voice trembling yet resolute, I've spent so much time trying to appear strong to mask my struggles. But the reality is, I'm as afraid as each of you. I've battled with feelings of inadequacy, feelings that I don't quite fit in, that I have to prove myself constantly. The silence enveloped her words, amplifying her release of pent-up emotions. The truth spilled forth with an urgency she hadn't anticipated. She recounted moments from her past times when the echo of disapproval from those she looked up to reverberated through her mind like a ceaseless drone. Times when she had felt alone in crowded rooms, paralyzed by the fear of judgment. As she shared, she felt the room respond. Every nod and whisper of understanding from her peers reinforced her bravery. They were no longer strangers, each a part of a greater human experience. The trepidation in her voice began to transform into something more powerful. Connections woven with empathy and compassion began to blossom. Sometimes, I still feel like I'm climbing the same steep hill every day, trying to find my footing, she continued. But maybe it's okay to admit that I struggle. Maybe that's not a sign of weakness. Maybe embracing those fears can actually make us stronger. The room resonated with murmurs of agreement, and even the most guarded faces softened, revealing raw emotions. Emily felt a swell of warmth, the solidarity they shared acting as a balm for her spirit that had long been in turmoil. Yet, just beneath the surface, her heart still wrestled with the shadows of her own self-doubt. Would the authenticity she had just poured out truly resonate? Or would some voice, lurking in the recesses of her mind, still try to belittle her for not being enough? As she navigated these conflicting thoughts, another hand shot up, this time from Mia, a girl notorious for being stoic. What if being vulnerable feels like losing control? She asked, her voice wavering. I want to be open, but what if I end up feeling even more exposed, more broken? Emily's chest tightened. Mia's question was a mirror reflecting her own fears back at her. What if opening up led her down a path filled with even deeper scars? The fear of vulnerability felt like an anchor, threatening to pull her back into the abyss she had fought so hard to escape. Realizing this moment was critical, Emily took a deep breath, inviting the room into her own contemplation. That's the thing about vulnerability, she mused aloud. It can feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff. You have to decide whether to jump into the unknown or retreat into what's comfortable. The circle pulsed with emotion, and Emily could see, in the eyes of the others, a mix of fear and hope. They were all at the edge of something, a precipice of profound change, and she understood that the risk of falling could yield the gift of soaring. In that moment of clarity, she realized her path forward lay not in erasing her fears, but in integrating them into her identity, a component of her growth, rather than something that diminished her. Her voice steadied with newfound resolve as she spoke. I think we grow when we embrace that discomfort, and maybe in sharing our fears, we can find the strength to confront them together. But as the discussions continued and the room filled with unanimous nods and murmurs of agreement, the echoes of her earlier apprehensions remained. The looming question reverberated. What if she hadn't fully confronted her past? What if sharing her story still left the deepest wounds untouched? With her heart pounding an unmistakable mix of dread and exhilaration, Emily understood this was just the beginning. She could feel the threads of discovery pulling her deeper into the fabric of her own narrative, and in that realization echoed the certainty of an impending confrontation with her past. Would she be ready to unravel the most concealed secrets of her heart when the time arrived? The hour of reckoning was approaching, and it would demand everything she had. Days blurred into one another as Emily confronted the emotional fallout of her gathering. The warmth and acceptance she had experienced intermingled with an unsettling tension curling silently in her chest. Despite the connections forged, an unanswered question haunted her. Would she truly find freedom through the act of vulnerability? That night, as she sat cross-legged on her bed, diary open and pen poised, the overwhelming urge to articulate her feelings emerged again. Yet with each stroke, the weight of her past loomed heavily above her. She had shared her struggles, but the shadows of old insecurities still dictated her perception of self-worth, suffocating any lingering notion of acceptance. The realization struck that perhaps the most significant step required confronting the parts of herself she had long buried. It had been easy to talk about anxiety and fear, but laying bare the deeper scars, a mix of past failures, disappointments, and traumas reminded her of why she had resisted vulnerability for so long. Each narrative segment she penned reminded her of moments when judgment had turned her world upside down, those stings of criticism that, though distant, stirred shame as if they were recent wounds. Each page turned felt like peeling back layers of armor she had painstakingly crafted over the years, revealing the tender soul beneath. As dawn broke, Emily made a pivotal decision. She would confront her pain in front of her classmates. They had extended their courage. It was time to return the favor. She took a deep breath, feeling both fear and urgency spiral within her. By confronting her past, she hoped not only to liberate herself, but also to inspire those who struggled similarly. Days later, as she prepared to speak once more, anticipation electrified the air. Her classmates, eager and curious, filled the seats. Emily's pulse quickened. The moment of truth was upon her. Standing much like she did before, she centered her resolve and recalled the connection she had fostered during their first sharing circle. Thank you all for being here today again. I want to continue our conversation from last time. Her voice resonated through the classroom, weaving through the murmurs and silence alike. I've shared how I feel, but it's time that I talk about the fears that still lie beneath those shadows lingering in my heart. Each word spilled from Emily's heart, addressing moments in her life where she faltered, and those who had made her doubt herself. She recounted flashbacks of painful experiences when peers dismissed her, the narratives doing more harm than good in shaping her self-image. The echoes of judgment, those moments of ridicule that thrived in silence, served as catalysts for her insecurities. To be vulnerable is sometimes to face the harshest echoes of your past, she acknowledged, courage visibly rising with each recollection. I'm still learning that vulnerability doesn't denote weakness, but rather a fierce source of empowerment. If I can share my truth, perhaps it can help someone else to do the same. In that moment, She felt her peers become mirrors reflecting her courage, igniting stories that resonated deeply with one another. Stories of loss, fear, and resilience spilled effortlessly from their mouths as they began to make their own connections. The discussion transformed the atmosphere, a tangible shift underscored by empathy and mutual understanding. As eyes lit up across the room, the feelings of isolation she once endured lessened. Here she stood in a circle of shared experiences, no longer just fighting her battles alone. The transformation had blossomed. This vulnerability was a tether, rooting her not only in her own strength but connecting her to those around her in a profound way. As the class wrapped up, Emily looked around, and her heart swelled with pride. It wasn't merely about her journey anymore, but about the collection of souls who dared to embrace their struggles alongside her. She had stepped into her truth, not merely for herself, but for others. Weeks passed, the environment infused with newfound support. Emily's discussion circle evolved into a safe haven where students exchanged their vulnerabilities. They began hosting recurring dialogues, each session building on the last, nurturing connections and fostering an unfaltering spirit of resilience. Emily gradually transformed into a confident figure nurtured by mutual understanding. She was no longer the hesitant girl weighed down by past fears, but a catalyst for change, embodying leadership and compassion. Then came the night of the school's annual awards ceremony, a moment she once viewed from the sidelines. This time, she stood center stage, not for accolades but to receive recognition for her impact on the community. The applause that followed ignited a fire within her. She had conquered not only public speaking but the uncertain layers of her identity. In that spotlight, with classmates and mentors who had rallied for her side, Emily felt the warmth of acceptance wrap around her, validation for both her struggles and triumphs. It served as a reminder of how far she had come. Before stepping down, she took a final moment to address the crowd. "I want to remind anyone struggling out there, your story matters. Embrace your truth. It is a source of incredible power. Never underestimate your ability to impact others." Emily descended from the stage, a solid confidence igniting within her chest. She had achieved more than she could have imagined. Behind her stood friends and mentors who both inspired her journey and celebrated her success. In her little corner of the world, she proved that challenges could become catalysts for personal growth. She emerged transformed, a person who navigated through darkness to light, exemplifying that vulnerability could yield strength, connection, and hope. This was the moment when Emily realized she didn't just triumph over her fears, she became the very beacon she once longed to emulate. Now, it's your turn to take that leap of faith in your own personal journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.